I have Dr. Jerome Corsi. Dr. Corsi, thank you for joining me.
Well, Stephen, it's always a pleasure to be with you. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to jump right in. I believe you and I are on the same page when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. I don't have a dog in the fight. I just want the killing to stop. I believe Russia is winning and will win. I believe Zelensky is being foolish for prolonging the war and letting his people be sponsored. President Trump said something interesting today about Obama and Russia and the G7. Let me pull that up on the screen. Let's watch this and react to it.
I look forward to that. The G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago. But it didn't work out that way. But it used to be the G8. And now it's, I guess, what's that, 8 years ago, it switched over. They threw Russia out, which I claimed was a very big mistake. Even though I wasn't in politics then, I was very loud about it. It was a mistake in that you spend so much time talking about Russia, and he's no longer at the table. So it makes life more complicated. But you wouldn't have had the war. Other than that, I think we're going to accomplish a lot.
Okay, so President Trump is convinced that if the election hadn't been rigged, he was president, this war wouldn't happen, millions of people would still be alive. But then today he's saying, look at what Obama did. They removed Russia from being in the G8. This doesn't make Putin or Russia feel good or valued. And then we start putting all this pressure on them through Ukraine. It's no wonder this war broke out. You and I talked about this war is not going to end until Putin and Trump can get together. Now, I believe that, but I believe Zelensky and others in Europe, they're trying to press Trump into giving more money. They're trying to keep this war going. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree with your analysis. I think that the truth is Obama and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden are the origin of this war. And the Democratic Party, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, when Russia renounced communism, the Democrats decided they hated Russia. From 1917 on, the Democrats had loved Russia, as long as it was communist. Okay, and then you have this. I have a book. I'm going to pull it. This book right here. It's called Provoked, and it is by Scott Horton. The book is nearly 1,000. It's 600 and some pages long. Wow. And it is a thoroughly documented case of how Washington started the new Cold War with Russia and the catastrophe in Ukraine. And they go back to what I know, and that is that, because I was in the middle of this with the Mueller investigation, as you remember, they wanted to put me in prison. I wouldn't take their plea deal. And they ended the Mueller investigation. They threatened to put me in prison the rest of my life unless I bent to say I had a tie with Julian Assange, which I did not do. That was the last thing they wanted to get Donald Trump. So I've known about this corruption and lying. Hillary Clinton, going back to about 2013, when Obama let her have a private email server. Obama even had his secret username and email address on Hillary's private server. And Bill and Hillary were running the Clinton Foundation for money when she was Secretary of State, and Obama let her do that to enrich themselves. They were taking money from Pinochet, who was an oligarch in Ukraine, and the State Department did everything they could with Soros to launch color revolutions in Ukraine and depose Yanukovych, who was a Russian-oriented president of Ukraine, and to push Ukraine into NATO, right at the edge of Russia. And we set up biolabs like Wuhan in Ukraine, and we had CIA missions. We had 35 CIA stations on the border with Russia. And then Zelensky started sending neo-Nazi brigades into these 2 Russian-speaking provinces to kill Russian-speaking Ukrainians who wanted to be independent. And finally, he started sending in these brigades to kill clergy in the Russian Orthodox Church. And Putin had enough of it. We had the Minsk agreements, in which this was going to come to an end. and Boris Johnson broke the Minsk agreements. Okay, so we provoked this whole war, and Donald Trump is right, and he knows it. Same time, we gave Joe Biden the right to go and, with his son, get bribes out of, the Ukraine, and they made fortune on Ukraine. It's all a money laundering bribery scheme with a corrupt country that the Democrats were at the center of. Now, to get to today, President Trump has made abundant efforts in talking with Putin that Russia's not giving back these two provinces. And there's no way without World War III that France and Germany and the others can get them back. That Europe doesn't have the military wherewithal. Europe could do better running a transgender parade down the Champs-Élysées than they could putting in military that would fight against Russia in Ukraine. But instead, they want to give them these long-range missiles, and we have a general that is coordinating some of these drone attacks. And command, I'm about to release his name. I'll probably do that later this week. Who thinks that is defying Trump's policies and wanting to exacerbate the war. I think these Democrats would rather have World War III, a nuclear confrontation, than have their crimes be exposed. Their crimes are horrendous. Okay, so Donald Trump's solution, which he's starting to hint at in this new budget, is if Zelensky doesn't come around, we just cut Zelensky off of the money and the aid. Without money and the aid, Zelensky has nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. And this war ends, and the killing stops. And sorting out who's right and wrong, we have to clean out the legacy appointments in the State Department. We maybe fired 10% of the federal. We need to fire 90%. The legacy State Department and other employees in the federal government will just resist. They'll think that they're working for themselves, and they'll think they're going to be there long after Trump is gone. They'll just wait it out. So we need to get rid of this bureaucracy and not replace it.
Let me ask you this. So two things. Zelensky says we want peace, but Putin won't come to the table. Then they do this drone attack deep into Russia. A week later, they bomb the Crimea bridge, and both times Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio say, nobody told us that this was happening. This isn't how you bring peace, attacking them and then claiming they're attacking you. So are their forces undermining Trump to keep this war going?
Yes, absolutely, including American generals.
And is Lindsey Graham one of those? Because he and Blumenthal, they fly over there. They're now doing official foreign business on behalf of Trump, but it's the opposite of what Trump wants.
They're over there encouraging Zelensky to stay at war. And Lindsey Graham has never seen a war he doesn't like. Loves them all. He's a neocon, pure and simple, and benefiting from the wars. I mean, I want to know how Lindsey Graham got his fortune. Okay, I want to know how all these congressmen and congresswomen and senators got their fortunes. Why is, Elizabeth Warren worth $68 million? Why is Nancy Pelosi as wealthy as she is? Harry Truman said the only way to get rich in politics is if you're a crook. And he was right. Okay, so there's a lot of money made on war from the arms dealers and the arms manufacturers, the bankers, and then they can reconstruct the country and make money doing that. War is a very profitable business. General Smedley Butler told us that, and after, between World War I and World War II. He said, war is a racket. He wrote a book called War is a Racket. Only about money. Well, again, President Trump and Putin can settle this war, but every time Zelensky is given drones or missiles, Zelensky wants to keep the war going. He sent his wife on $1 million jewelry buying sprees. He owns, I don't know how many mansions around the world, and they'll probably be killed by the Ukrainian oligarchs who think they own the natural resources, the rare earth minerals in Ukraine, not the United States. Zelensky doesn't keep producing. He's a dead man walking. Somewhere somebody's going to whack him because he's got only enemies, and he's perpetuating a war that Donald Trump's right should never have been fought in the first place. And it's the same thing with the Obama and John Kerry sending airplanes full of money in cash, euros, because we didn't have all the dollars. They wanted euros. We sent them euros and cargo planes full of money to appease Iran on a deal that John Kerry made that basically allowed Iran to enrich uranium to nuclear grade, but not until after Obama was out of office. Okay, and then that deal, they tried to press Trump to take that deal. Well, Trump negotiated with Iran and finally said the Iran was going to demand the right to enrich uranium, and Trump said no. And Trump understands that the problem in the Middle East has always been Iran. I wrote Atomic Iran 2006, and I've been in Israel and talked with the government more times than I can remember since then, and before that actually, and it was constantly a theme that Iran would get to this point where it was about to deliver nuclear weapons. It could have made 2 of them right now, and Israel just couldn't wait. I wrote a book called Why Israel Can't Wait. There would come a day when Israel had no choice but to attack, or 1 nuclear weapon over Tel Aviv would destroy the modern Jewish state as we know it. And, I sat with Yalon, the vice president of Israel, in 2011. He said, Dr. Corsi, we will do anything to protect the Jewish state regardless of the consequences. We're not going to let Israel be wiped off the map. And so therefore, when it got down to this time, Gaza is now being decimated, and we're not going to let Hamas back in Gaza. We do the same thing all over again. We're going to repeat failed policies. The Palestinian game of getting money that is stolen on their cause while the Palestinian people are used as pawns, the anti-Americanism, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthi rebels in Yemen, well, they've all been largely neutralized. And now Iran is begging for a ceasefire so it doesn't get ultimately destroyed. Israel's goal has got to be to make sure that Iran can't make a nuclear weapon, and secondly, to make sure the regime is changed. And I had a meeting with Uri Lubrani, who is Iranian-born, but the Iranian expert in the Israel Defense Force in 2006, which is 19 years ago. And we talked then about infiltrating. Well, he was Iranian-born. He was infiltrating the nuclear establishment and the military and the political apparatus of Iran with Israeli agents. And they're being very effective now in killing the leadership from within. And if this war continues, the Ayatollah and the mullahs will be hunted down. But again, we're at a point in history where we've got to turn back this globalism. We've got to turn back this, transhumanism, this godless agenda, which the Democratic Party exemplifies. I wrote a book, The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy, and predicted this would come to anarchy. And it's a Marxist movement that's morphed. And we're funding it through the corruption in the government with U.S. aid and with Act Blue. They have all the money they want from people who want to destroy America. But now we're going to expose it. With the help of the American people, God's 5 Stones is going to lead the charge on this. I'm going to produce the evidence on both the voter fraud and defeat it, and on Act Blue, and we're going to defeat it. And we've got them cold on both. We've got hard data. We got the mortgage data of the mortgage fraud. We've got the operations of bringing the drugs and the children into the country through Tennessee and other states. We got the fraud in Maricopa County that's at the heart of the Act Blue corruption. Got the NGOs who are participating in this and making millions and billions of dollars doing it. I've got the voter data algorithms. We can show you hard data. And President Trump is going to act on all of this. It's in progress.
Hey, I want to be brief. If you give your body what it needs, the immune system can take care of you. That's how God and nature designed our bodies. And I want to tell you about a way to raise your happiness levels, your immunity, your bloating, your waistline. All of these things improve when you take kimchi. This is Kimchi One by Brightcore. They've been a sponsor of the channel for many, many months. I take this, my family takes this, my 11-year-old who had bowel issues, we're able to clear these up with kimchi. Now, there's good bacteria and bad bacteria in your gut. You have to flourish, nurture, give life to the good bacteria. In each capsule of kimchi is 900 strains of the good bacteria. You got to check them out. They're absolutely amazing. Now, if you go to mybrightcore.com/kimchi or snap the QR code, you're going to get 25% off. But you guys are smarter than that. Call them right now, 888-908-4425. Get up to 50% off plus free shipping. Do your gut a favor. Do your health and your happiness a favor. And do your wallet a favor. Call them at 888-908-4425 for up to 50% off plus free shipping. Help me clarify this, because Trump is saying, I want Iran to not have a nuclear weapon, and I want them to get to the negotiating table. At the same time, he's trying to hold the line of, I'm the president of peace. I don't want to go to war. Israel's asking them to join. He's saying, no, thank you, but we're going to support you in doing what you want. Now Tucker Carlson is coming out saying, if Trump goes in on Iran with Israel, he's going to ruin his legacy. He's going to completely go against everything he said, being the president of peace. Do you feel like he's trapped between a rock and a hard place, or does he know exactly what he wants to do with Iran and his legacy?
I think Trump's got a brilliant strategy in both regards, and unfortunately, Tucker just doesn't get it. In other words, we're not going to be involved in the Ukrainian war anymore. This general who is firing the missiles is going to be identified. We're not going to be, and Trump's just going to say, I'm not playing. Okay, now if the United States doesn't play, Zelensky has no money. Okay, and if we support Israel, Israel will do the job. Okay, now Trump's going to, again, Trump knows that war only perpetuates war. Because, as soon as you kill a group of Iranians because you want them not to have nuclear weapons, all their relatives and children and lineage decide they're going to have a war against you of revenge. So each war just produces the revenge that sets up the next war. Just like World War I and the settlement imposed upon Germany, which was not a fair settlement, with all the reparations that Germany had to pay. They bankrupt Germany. Well, that set up the hatred for World War II. The only way to break war is just not to have war. And Trump is the first peacemaker I've seen walk the face of the earth as a true peacemaker. The Beatitudes say, blessed are the peacemakers, for they are the sons of God. And Jesus Christ was a peacemaker. He did not proclaim war. He proclaimed peace. He proclaimed love and salvation. He wasn't liberation theology. He didn't come here to champion the poor. He came here to save souls, which is what this place is really all about. And Donald Trump knows that. He understands that. And so therefore, in these conflicts, he's going to wear Zelensky down to where Zelensky has fewer and fewer options. And Europe is not going to come to his defense. Europe is going to probably go bankrupt pretty quick before they go to his defense. Europe is corrupt in its internal functioning. Its debt is massive. And this Iranian war is going to increase the price of energy to where Europe is going to have a financial crisis in the winter. And all the Europeans want to do is impose more sanctions against Russia. Well, Trump understands that's not the solution. And Trump and Putin understand for Ukraine and for the Middle East, it's got to be prosperity is the only thing that produces peace. If everybody can benefit economically, if everybody can make a living and feed their families, you don't have as many wars. But if we keep fighting these conflicts on right and wrong and on we've got to win, we just got to basically say we're not going to have any more wars because every war has the potential to be thermonuclear from here on. So we've got to abandon the idea as a species that war is a solution. We've got to understand what Smedley Butler said, and that War itself is the problem. We're talked by propaganda into war. We're taught to hate somebody else, so we go to war against them. And we're the ones who fight the war and lose our lives. And the bankers and the arms manufacturers make money. And it's a big racket. And it's a racket that is aimed at destroying the human race, not elevating it. We must get beyond this. If we can prosper, if Trump keeps the Palestinians out of the Gaza, I think he's going to start subcontracting the reconstruction of Gaza. He's going to start subcontracting to private companies. We have private-public partnerships to get the criminal illegal aliens out of the country, and he made it clear he's after the criminal illegal aliens. Americans will support these policies. If we go against crime, we go against evil, and we enforce laws and get back to the Abraham Accords, the Middle East can prosper. All it requires is for the Middle Eastern countries to say, we'll just accept the Jewish state and end this anti-Semitism, which is a human pathology that we need to get beyond. And so therefore, we've got to embrace and understand a whole culture of peacemaking as opposed to a culture of war making. It will be a transformation of the human species. That's a God-driven transformation of the human species. It's what Jesus Christ preached on earth 2,000 years ago. Blessed are the peacemakers. They're the sons of God. That's what he said in the Beatitudes. And it's the only thing that makes any sense.
Yeah. Dr. Jerome Corsi, thank you for coming on. If people want to support you and learn more, God's Five Stones, 5 F-I-V-E, I'll put a direct link so they can find it easily. And then if people want to follow you online and catch your podcast, where can I point them towards?
It's on CorsiNation.com, and I'm doing podcasts every weekday, CORSINation.com. And God's is Gods, no apostrophe, and then you spell out 5, F-I-V-E, and Stones is plural.com. And it's, of course, the biblical story of the 5 smooth stones that David picked up before he went after Goliath. And what I'm saying is let's find these truth pebbles to launch against the satanic deep state and defeat it. And truth is what wins. You know, truth is what sets us free, and truth is our best weapon against the satanic evil that wants to steal our children into sex slavery, you know, fill us with drugs and do all the other horrible things they can do to try to make themselves transhuman elite while they kill in their depopulation billions of people on the face of the earth. And this is just an evil agenda. Now it's exposed. We've got to eliminate it by identifying the criminals and bringing them to justice. They'll flee fast it's like the only way to end these riots. And in the 1960s, I was an undergraduate. I was in my 20s. I was already writing books about it, saying when the race riots were occurring, and then Martin Luther King was right. It was about discrimination. It wasn't about supremacy of the black race over the white race on this gender theory and this racial critical theory. But I said you can't solve the problem through race riots. The only way to stop them was by massive police force with National Guard and the Army. They'll stop. When these Antifa thugs realize that it's not a game to stop cars and to terrorize people, then, you know, harass the police and burn down cities, that they're going to go to prison for doing it. They won't be it's not such a fun game. And getting paid by some NGO to put on your Antifa uniform is going to have consequences. So you start arresting these protesters. You see the police now slamming them to the cement and handcuffing them, putting them in buses and to take them off to prison to be brought to trial. They start crying. They didn't think this was a consequence. When they realize it's a consequence, there's going to be far fewer protesters.
Yeah, I agree. I love that they're cracking down. I don't want to see another summer of love. Dr. Corsi, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I'm going to put those direct links down below. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Well, in the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. We're just at a transformative place in the human race where we have to reject Satan and all the evil Satan can think of. We got to love and support our children and support our families and get back to God. And Donald Trump, I think, is on the right path as a peacemaker, and he sees a higher vision than Lindsey Graham certainly does. Lindsey Graham wants us to repeat mistakes that have not worked for 2 millennium. Let's try something different. And I think finally Donald Trump has an idea here that he's going to stick to, and he's seen a new vision. I think Donald Trump is a changed human being after the assassination attempts, and he's embraced the idea of God in a much deeper. I saw him, through this weekend, and they're talking about people saying he's the most famous man in the world. He said, "No, I'm not the most." He said, "There's another." He said, the most famous person to ever live was Jesus Christ, not me. And he was right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he is a different person. I do believe he has an idea of exactly what he wants to accomplish. Thank you again for coming on. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Always a great pleasure. Thank you, Stephen.